Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. Today, looking at some interesting albums that are coming out over the next couple of months. There's a bunch of links down below. You got links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that I put together every week, and the Patreon page. So make sure you check all that out. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. So typically on the channel here, I'll look at albums that are just coming out in that given week, but a couple of times over the course of the year, I'll look a little further out. So this time I'm looking at albums that are coming out over the summer months. There's a lot of them though. So I'm going to kind of break this up into two episodes. Today I'm just going to look at the June and July releases, and then next week I'll have all the August and September releases. So I'm going to start with a couple of albums that are coming out next week. So these are releases for June 27th. The very first one is a self-titled debut album from Marcy Playground. Came out back in 1997. It's been yellow vinyl. This is a Capitol web store exclusive, so you're not going to be able to find this anywhere other than Capitol's website. It's going to run you about $30. So this is an album that was never available on a vinyl until Record Store Day 2017. They did a pressing for Record Store Day. And then they also did a pressing for, I think it was the same pressing that they had on their 20th anniversary tour that they did that year. So this is like the only two places you get this album. So the RSD version, which was also on yellow vinyl, was cut at 45 RPM. It came with an extra 7-inch because they couldn't fit the last two songs on one album, and they didn't want to make it a 2 LP release, so they added in that extra 7-inch. That's not what this is. So the one that's coming out this week is just a standard 1 LP 33 RPM version. And now that I'm thinking about it, I think the tour edition from 2017 was also just 1 LP. Maybe it didn't have the extra 7-inch. I don't remember exactly if it did or if it didn't, but the one that's coming out this week is just a standard release. Sex and Candy was the big single off this one. The album reached number 21 on the Billboard 200, sold over 1 million copies here in the US. This is an album I haven't listened to in a very long time. I did pre-order this as soon as it went up on Capitol's website, so I'm looking forward to getting a copy of that next week. We've also got the Manticore tapes by Motorhead coming out. So this is a new 3 LP release from Motorhead. It's going to be on clear vinyl. It's going to run you about $100. So these are from the 1976 recording sessions that Motorhead did at Emerson, Lake and Palmer's legendary Manticore studio. These were all recorded a year before Motorhead's debut album came out. These legendary tapes are going to be available on vinyl for the first time ever. 1976 was an interesting year for Motorhead because it was about a year after Lemmy was kicked out of Hawkwind. He started Motorhead, and a lot of the songs are in these sessions would end up being on their debut album. Moving up to July 11th, there's actually a lot coming out that week. So the very first one you got is Television, Marquee Moon, released in 1977. This is their debut studio album. It's going to run about $40. So this is the Rhino High Fidelity version. Rhino released this, I think it was late last year, early this year. It was limited to, I think, 5,000 copies, sold out pretty quick. So what's coming out this week, or what's coming out in July, on July 11th, this is an unnumbered version of that same release. The Rhino High Fidelity releases are always mastered by Kevin Gray from the original analog tapes. They're pressed at optimal. I've got several of them in my collection. I don't have either of the ones that are coming out on July 11th. This is definitely one I'm going to grab though. Marquee Moon is one of those albums that it was hugely influential, and a lot of people have just kind of glossed over it for decades. Now Marquee Moon Television would take that 70s style punk, infuse that with some more jazz elements. It's definitely more melodic than what was going on in the middle to late part of the 70s. That ended up being a hugely important album. So like I said, I'm definitely going to grab a copy of that one. Then you've also got the self-titled debut album from The Cars. So this was released back in 1978. Same thing. These are part of the Rhino High Fidelity series, mastered by Kevin Gray, pressed to optimal, going around about $40. This is one of those albums that I've long considered one of the best debut albums of the 70s. I know Rolling Stone magazine also had it in their top 500 albums of all time. Not a big fan of The Cars, but this is definitely another one I need to grab. Also on July 11th, you got the new album from Wet Leg coming out. This is Moisturizer. It's their second studio album. It's going to run you about $28. I was really impressed with the British rock band's self-titled album from 2022. I think it ended the year in my top 25 list for the year. Their debut album hit number 14 on the Billboard 200, and a lot of times for a newer band, it can be hard to follow up an album like that. So I'm really interested to see how their sound has evolved over the last few years. So it's definitely one, I'm not going to pre-order that one, but I'll definitely stream it when it comes out. Then you've also got When I Woke by Rusted Root getting reissued. This came out back in 1994 as their second studio album. It's going to be on Rust and Blue Sky vinyl. 2 LP release. It is kind of pricey though. It's going to run about $50. This is the first time this album has ever been available on vinyl. It's kind of a little bit more of a limited run. There's only going to be, I think, 2,500 copies of it. 1994 was an interesting year for music, especially here in the US, because music was really changing. Grunge was over basically by 1994. And it was a perfect time for a band like Rusted Root to kind of break into the mainstream, because they had, yes, they were a rock band. They had a lot of really strong folk elements in there, though. They incorporated like some African elements in there. There's some Latin influence. I think it's the only album I've ever listened to from the band, but I had it on CD back in the day. And even with as pricey as that album is, it was an instant pre-order for me. It's definitely another one I'm looking forward to. Sticking with July 11th, you got Still Living in the Past by Jethro Hall coming out. So this was released back in 1972. This is going to run you about $35. It's a 2 LP release. This is the new Steven Wilson remix of the album. So Living in the Past was a compilation album that came out in 72. And there were singles on there, there were some B-sides, there were some live tracks, there were some remixes, all from 68 to 71, which I've long considered, the best period from the band. I love that early period of Jethro Tull where they were more of a kind of straightforward blues rock band. Most of the tracks on this album were newly remastered by Steven Wilson, but some of these tracks he remastered back in 2011 when we started doing the remixes for Jethro Tull's catalog. This was also another album that didn't get reissued for a very long time. The last reissue of this was back in 2016, and that was the first time it had been reissued since 1984. I got the 2016 reissue, so I'm kind of on the fence about that one. We'll see if I end up grabbing that one, though. Then you've also got a reissue of 311 self-titled album, released back in 1995. It was their third studio album. It's going about $41. This is a 2 LP release. This is going to be on Blue Smoke vinyl, being released for the album's 30th anniversary. This was the band's big breakthrough album. It hit number 12 on the Billboard 200, and there for like the summer, like 1995 and 1996, you couldn't get away from several of the songs off this album. This new 30th anniversary pressing does include 7 new bonus tracks, which were never available until 2015 when they released their archive box set, but this is the first time those 7 tracks have been available on vinyl. And you got one more album coming out on July 11th that I got on my list. This is Mask by Kansas. Came out back in 75. It was our third studio album. 50th anniversary release. It's going to be on yellow vinyl. It's going to run you about $39. This one is going to be a little bit more limited. It's going to be limited to 1,000 copies. It is a music on vinyl release also. So because those are pressed in the Netherlands, it can sometimes take an extra week or two to hit stores here in the US. But whenever anyone talks about Kansas albums, typically, Point of No Return and Left Overture are the 2 big albums from the band. But I think Mask was the album that really kind of set the foundation for what they would do on those albums. And it doesn't get the same respect as those other 2 albums when I really think it should. Because I kind of look at Mask the same way I look at Metal from Pink Floyd, where, without Metal, you wouldn't have, The Dark Side of the Moon. You wouldn't have Wish You Were Here. You wouldn't have The Wall. Those other great albums that came on after that. Mask is the same way. Without what they did on that album, what they kind of figured out, what they kind of set in motion on that album is what happened or what would lead to those next couple of great albums. And this is another one of those albums just hasn't been pressed in a really long time. Last pressing of this one was back in 2013, which is also music on vinyl release, and the pressing before that was 1978. I probably won't pre-order a copy of it, but if I end up coming across a copy in a store, I probably will grab that one. So that was the last one I had on July 11th. So jump ahead 1 week to July 18th. You've got the new album from Bush coming out. This is I Beat Loneliness. It's their 10th studio album. There's a black version of this. There's also a Coke bottle clear version, which I think is going to be, the version's going to be available in indie stores. It's going to run you about $40. Bush is one of those bands that really helped define alternative rock, kind of post-grunge, in the middle part of the 90s. And while I love the first several albums, I don't think I really listened to any of their 21st century albums until probably within the last couple of years. So I started listening to more of their more recent albums, and their last 2 albums I thought were really good. Are they on par with what they did with 16 Stone and Razor Blade Suitcase? No, but they're definitely a lot better than I thought they would be. And the band said this new album is going to be kind of a fusion of that older, like post-grunge alternative rock sound with a blending of what they've done on the last couple of albums. It's another one that I probably won't pre-order, but I'll definitely stream it and probably end up picking up a copy of it. Also on July 18th, you've got the reissue of the Aussie Osborne See You on the Other Side version 2.0 box set that came out, I think March or April this year that got released. Sold out really quick. Of course, this album, or the box set, originally came out back in 2019. It was limited. I forgot how many, was it 2,000 or 3,000 copies it was when it came out the first time. The first box set sold out pretty quick, and a lot of people have been waiting for this box set to get reissued. When it got reissued earlier this year, a lot of people pre-ordered it and ended up having the pre-orders canceled. So there was a lot of people that missed out on it. And then around the time that the box set came out earlier this year, it was announced that there would be a reissue of it this summer. It's a really expensive box set, even though it does have 27 LPs in it. It's going to run you, I think I saw it online for like $615 to $625, which is a lot. I'm actually a little surprised they're pricing it the same price as what the reissue was earlier this year, because the one that came out earlier this year came with a signed, certificate of authenticity. It was also numbered. This new one that's coming out this summer is not numbered and it's not signed either. So because of those two reasons, I actually thought the one that would come out this summer would actually be a little cheaper. But hopefully the people that missed out on that reissue earlier this year will be able to grab a copy of it this summer. I will say that, Scream just got reissued. That was the first time that had been reissued since it was originally released earlier, just a couple of weeks ago that one came out. So hopefully over the next coming months, they'll slowly start reissuing more of these long out of print albums from Ozzy Osbourne, especially Speak of the Devil. I'd love to see that one get a reissue. But then again, I wouldn't be surprised if that got dragged out for the next several years. But hopefully we'll see those coming out eventually. That same day, you've also got the new album from Laura Jane Grace coming out. This is Adventure Club. It's her third studio album. It's going to be on pink vinyl. It's going to run you about $25. So this is a new solo album from the lead singer of Against Me. That's her follow-up to Hole in My Head, which came out last year, which I actually thought was a pretty good album. She still has that Against Me kind of punk style on these albums or on these songs, but, kind of incorporates a little more folk flair on them also. She's already released 4 singles off of the new album, and, I'm not a huge fan of them. I'll definitely give this album a chance, though, once it comes out, because it wouldn't be the first time that I've hated a couple of singles and then end up loving the album. So, like I said, I'll definitely give it a chance. And the last album I got for July 18th is From Under the Cork Tree by Fall Out Boy. Came out back in 2005. It was their second studio album. It was a 20th anniversary release. It's going to run about $28. This is a reissue of the band's huge breakthrough album. This is the album that made Fall Out Boy a household name in the early part of the 2000s. The album hit number 9 on the Billboard 200, sell over 1 million copies. I think really the strength of the 2 big singles off this album, which were Sugar We're Going Down and Dance Dance, both of which were, I think, top 5 on the Billboard Hot 100. I think it was the strength of those 2 singles that really helped make that album what it was. It is a really good album. I already have a copy of it. I would have liked to see them do something a little bit extra for the 20th anniversary of this. Have a second LP of live material or demos, something to kind of add to the album, because this has been reissued a bunch of times over the last few years. So, that is coming out. Like I said, that was the last album I got for July 18th. So we're going to jump up to July 25th for the last couple albums. The first one I've got is The Revenge of Alice Cooper. So this is their 30th studio album. It's actually their 8th as the Alice Cooper Band, though. This is a 2 LP release. It's going to be on yellow vinyl. It's going to run you about $45. This is the first album with the Alice Cooper Band since Muscle of Love back in '73. But the gears were set in motion in 2021 when all the surviving members got together for the first time and recorded 3 tracks for Detroit Stories. And really ever since then, it's been rumored that this album was eventually coming. So it's one I've been looking forward to. I love the early Alice Cooper Band albums. Bob Ezrin is back to produce this new album. Like I said, I've already got this one on pre-order. This is definitely one I'm looking forward to. And then the last 2 albums I got on my list are both albums from July 25th, and they're 2 albums that fans have been asking a very long time to get reissued. The first one was Mellow Gold by Beck, came out in 1994. It was his 3rd studio album. It's going to run you about $32. This was the album that introduced the world to Beck's more unique musical style, and it's the first time it's been officially reissued since 2016. It's been bootlegged a bunch of times since then, though, and whenever the topic came up on social media of albums that people wanted to see reissued, Mellow Gold was always on that list. This is another one of those albums that helped define rock music in the middle part of the 90s. Of course, Loser was a huge track off this one. Oddly enough, though, Mellow Gold would end up being Beck's 2nd biggest album to date, behind Only Odelay. It's another one of those albums I haven't listened to in a very long time. I need to revisit it before it comes out on the 25th. And then the last album I got is an album that's never been available on vinyl. This is one I've been talking about for the last several years. I've been wanting this one to get an official release. This is Ultraphobic by Warrant, released in 1995. It was their 4th studio album, 30th anniversary release. It's going to run you about $33. So they've been kind of slowly reissuing some of Warrant's albums. I know Dog Eat Dog just got reissued in 2022. They've also recently done a reissue of Cherry Pie and Dirty Rotten Filthy Stinking Rich. But really starting with Ultraphobic. from there on until the end of Warrant's career, I don't think any of those albums were available on vinyl. So this is what I've been wanting to see get released. It's an album that it's definitely darker and heavier than what Warrant did earlier in their career. And it's one of those albums I think a lot of people just kind of glossed over just because it was Warrant. And that hair metal style and sound by 1995 was long gone. And Warrant was one of those bands that, didn't just try to recreate what they were doing earlier in their career. They tried to evolve with rock music. And it's an album that, I don't think it's as good as some of their other earlier albums, but it's an album I think is far better than a lot of people give credit for. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know which albums you're looking forward to grab. And like I said, these are just from June and July releases. I'll come back next week with the August and September releases. There's a lot of great stuff coming out over the summer months. I think I already have, 4 or 5 pre-orders off of this list. I know I got Marcy Playground coming. I've got Rusted Root pre-ordered. I got the new Alice Cooper pre-ordered. That Bush album, I'm sure I'll pre-order before it ends up coming out. Lots of good stuff, though. Let me know what you guys are looking forward to, though. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.